Jake Lawson tightened his grip on the helm, his eyes squinting against the blinding vortex that had swallowed his boat. The storm had been fierce, but nothing could have prepared him for this, an otherworldly tunnel of light that churned the sea around him. Moments later, his boat emerged into calm waters, and Jake blinked in disbelief at the alien landscape before him. Twin suns hung in the sky, casting a golden hue over the sprawling, high-tech city on the horizon. "Where the hell am I?" he muttered, scanning the unfamiliar sea. His boat, a humble vessel designed for fishing, bobbed gently. As he tried to make sense of his surroundings, a sleek metallic craft approached, hovering above the water with an almost silent hum. Jake's heart pounded as the craft descended, revealing tall, slender beings with iridescent skin and large, expressive eyes, Zephrans. "Identify yourself," commanded the leader, his voice resonant and authoritative. Jake raised his hands, trying to appear non-threatening. "I'm Jake Lawson, a fisherman from Earth. I mean, no harm." The Zephrans exchanged skeptical glances before the leader spoke again. "I am Counselor Zarek. You are an intruder, and your presence here is highly suspicious. How did you breach our planetary defenses?" Jake swallowed hard, his mind racing. "I didn't mean to come here. I was caught in a storm, and then this." He gestured at the alien landscape. Zarek's eyes narrowed, and he signaled his men to bind Jake and lead him to their craft. Inside, Jake marveled at the technology. Smooth, seamless surfaces pulsed with soft light, and the air hummed with energy. Zarek's gaze never wavered from Jake. "We have been struggling for centuries to restore our dying oceans. What knowledge could a mere fisherman from Earth possibly offer?" Jake met Zarek's challenging stare. "More than you might think. Let me try to help." The journey to the Zephrin capital was a blur of advanced technology and anxious anticipation. Jake was taken to a grand hall, where the Zephrin Council awaited. They were a striking assembly of wisdom and authority, their faces etched with concern. "Explain your presence," demanded a female counselor, her tone less hostile than Zarek's but equally firm. Jake took a deep breath. "I was fishing in the Atlantic when a storm hit. Next thing I knew, I was here. I understand you're facing an environmental crisis. Back on Earth, I've dealt with similar issues: pollution, overfishing. Maybe my experience can help." The council exchanged whispers. Zarek scoffed. "Primitive methods will not solve our advanced problems." Jake's eyes flashed with determination. "Your advanced solutions haven't worked either. Let me prove myself." A tense silence followed before the counselor nodded. "You will be given a chance, but under strict supervision." Jake was escorted to the research facility, a marvel of futuristic design. Leora, a young scientist, greeted him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "So, you're the human who thinks he can save our oceans?" Jake shrugged, feeling the weight of the challenge. "I'm just a fisherman trying to help." "Where do we start?" Leora led him to a massive tank filled with polluted water. "This is a sample of our oceans. The pollution is unlike anything on Earth." Jake examined the water, his mind racing with possibilities. "We'll need to combine our knowledge, your technology, and my practical experience." They worked tirelessly, blending Earth's traditional methods with Zephrin innovations. Progress was slow, and Jake faced constant scrutiny from Zarek. Yet, small victories emerged: a cleaner patch of water, a saved marine creature. One evening, Jake found Leora staring at the polluted sea. "Do you really think we can do this?" she asked softly. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We've made progress. It's a start." As night fell on Zephra, Jake stood on the shore, watching the alien stars. The journey ahead was daunting, but he was resolved. This was his new battle, and failure was not an option. Jake stood at the edge of the Zephrin research facility, staring at the vast, polluted sea. The stench of decay filled the air, a stark reminder of the monumental task ahead. He felt the weight of the Zephran's skeptical eyes on him, particularly Zarek's. "Where do we start?" Jake asked, breaking the silence. Leora, the young scientist, stepped forward. "We need to understand the composition of the pollution first. It's a complex mix, unlike anything on Earth." Jake nodded, rolling up his sleeves. "All right, Let's get to work. They began by gathering water samples, using a combination of Zephrin tools and Jake's practical knowledge. The initial tests were disheartening. The pollution was extensive, and the standard filtration systems failed to make a significant impact. Jake frowned at the results. "This isn't going to be easy," he muttered. Leora glanced at him. "What did you expect?" "Not a miracle, but maybe a fighting chance," Jake replied. "We need to think differently. Let's try combining our methods." Together, they devised a plan. Using Earth's traditional techniques alongside Zephrin technology, they created a hybrid filtration system. Progress was slow, and there were many setbacks. The Zephrons watched in silence, their skepticism growing with each failure. But Jake refused to give up. "We're close," he insisted, adjusting the device. "We just need to tweak the chemical composition." Leora nodded, her hands deftly manipulating the controls. "Agreed. Let's run another test." The device hummed to life, filtering a small batch of water. To their relief, the water emerged significantly cleaner. Jake grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's working." That evening, as they reviewed the data, Jake saved a struggling marine creature using his newfound knowledge. The creature's revival earned him a flicker of approval from the Zephrans, but Zarek remained unconvinced. "You're wasting our time," Zarek accused, his voice cold. "Your methods are primitive and ineffective." Jake met his gaze, unflinching. "Give me more time. We're making progress." As the days passed, Jake and Leora continued to refine their techniques. They faced constant scrutiny from Zarek, who seemed determined to undermine their efforts. Yet, small victories kept them motivated. A cleaner section of the sea, a few revived marine species. One afternoon, Jake noticed Leora staring at the polluted horizon. "Do you ever think we can really do this?" she asked softly. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We have to. Giving up isn't an option." Leora sighed. "You're right. Let's keep pushing forward." Their persistence began to pay off. The hybrid system they developed showed promise, and the once dying ocean started to show signs of recovery. The water, though still murky, was noticeably clearer in places. Marine life, previously absent, began to return. One evening, as they celebrated a small victory, Zarek approached. "I still don't trust your methods," he said, his tone begrudgingly respectful. "But I can't deny the results." Jake nodded. "We're just getting started. There's a long road ahead." The following weeks were marked by intense work and growing tension. Jake's unorthodox methods often clashed with Zephrin customs, leading to friction. But despite the cultural divide, they continued their efforts, determined to prove that collaboration was the key to saving Zephra. One night, while working late, Jake found Leora deep in thought. "What's on your mind?" he asked. "I've been thinking about how much we've accomplished," she replied, "but also how much more there is to do." Jake smiled. "One step at a time. We'll get there." As the first signs of dawn broke over Zephra, Jake stood on the shore, watching the alien stars fade into the light. The journey ahead was daunting, but he was resolved. This was his new mission, and he wouldn't fail. The future of Zephra depended on it. The days that followed were filled with a relentless pace of work and rising tension. Jake's unconventional methods frequently clashed with the Zephran's rigid practices, causing friction. Despite this, Jake found an invaluable ally in Leora. Together, they pushed the boundaries of what was possible, their synergy growing stronger with each experiment. One morning, Jake and Leora were working on a new filtration prototype when Zarek entered the lab. "Your methods are disruptive," Zarek snapped. "You ignore our protocols and traditions." Jake straightened, meeting Zarek's gaze. "Your traditions haven't worked. We need to think outside the box." Zarek's eyes narrowed. "You overstep, Earthman." Leora stepped between them. "We're making progress, Zarek. Can't you see that?" Reluctantly, Zarek backed down, but his expression remained hostile. Jake sighed, turning back to the prototype. "We need to keep moving forward." Their latest attempt focused on a large-scale filtration system that combined Earth's biological methods with Zephrin nanotechnology. The process was painstakingly slow, each step requiring careful calibration. Despite setbacks, they began to see incremental improvements. The water, once murky and lifeless, showed signs of clarity. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Late one evening, Jake and Leora were testing the new system. As the machine hummed, a patch of water emerged, sparkling clear. "We did it," Jake whispered, awe in his voice. Leora smiled, exhaustion etched on her face. "It's a start." News of their success spread quickly. The Zephyrans, initially skeptical, began to believe in Jake's methods. Even Zarek couldn't deny the results, though he remained vocally opposed. One afternoon, while reviewing data, Jake noticed a fluctuation in the readings. "Something's wrong," he muttered, frowning at the screen. He traced the problem to a critical component of the filtration system. "It's been tampered with." He confronted Zarek in the council chamber. "You sabotaged our work." Jake's voice echoed through the hall. Zarek stood, unfazed. "You have no proof." "I have evidence," Jake retorted, holding up the damaged component. "This isn't just about you and me. It's about saving your planet." The room fell silent. Finally, the head counselor spoke. "We cannot afford internal conflicts. Zarek, you will cease these actions immediately." Defeated but defiant, Zarek nodded. "I will comply." The sabotage incident left the team wary, but it also solidified their resolve. Jake and Leora redoubled their efforts, working around the clock to repair the damage and enhance their system. They faced constant pressure, but their determination never wavered. One night, Jake found Leora staring at the sky. "What's on your mind?" he asked, joining her. "I've been thinking about how far we've come," she said softly, "but also how much more there is to do." Jake nodded. "It's a long road, but we'll get there." Their persistence paid off. The water began to clear, not just in small patches, but across larger areas. Marine life started to return, a hopeful sign of recovery. The Zephyrans watched in awe as their oceans showed signs of healing. During a council meeting, the head counselor addressed Jake. "Your efforts have yielded results. We are grateful. But this is only the beginning." Jake nodded. "I understand. We need to maintain and improve our methods." Zarek, though subdued, couldn't hide his lingering doubt. "And if you fail?" Jake met his gaze. "We won't." The chapter closed with a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but the first steps had been taken. Jake and Leora's partnership, forged in the fires of conflict and cooperation, stood as a beacon of hope for Zephra. The journey was far from over, but they had proven that change was possible, and that was enough to keep them going. The stars above Zephra shone brightly that night, reflecting the renewed hope in the hearts of its people. The pollution crisis reached a critical point. The once blue waters of Zephra had turned murky, the toxic chemicals spreading faster than anticipated. The advanced filtration system, their beacon of hope, malfunctioned, causing widespread panic. Leora nodded, her face pale with worry. "We need to fix this now, or we'll lose everything we've achieved." As they hurried to the malfunctioning unit, Jake's heart sank as he saw the scale of the damage. "It's worse than we thought," he said, shaking his head. "The entire system is compromised." Zarek appeared, his expression grim. "What do you propose, Earthman?" Jake took a deep breath. "We need to implement a large-scale solution immediately. It's risky, but it's our only chance." Zarek crossed his arms, skepticism etched on his face. "What do you have in mind?" Jake outlined his plan. "We use a combination of Earth's biological filtration methods and your nanotechnology to create a self-sustaining system. It will be a massive effort, but it's our best shot." Leora added, "We'll need everyone's cooperation. This isn't just about technology, it's about survival." Zarek considered their proposal. "Very well," he said finally. "But if this fails, it will be on your heads." Mobilizing the entire Zephran society was no small feat. Scientists, engineers, and laborers all worked together under Jake and Leora's guidance. The atmosphere was tense, but the sense of urgency pushed them forward. Jake coordinated the efforts, his voice steady despite the chaos. We need to install the new units here and here, he directed, pointing to the schematics. And make sure the chemical ratios are exact. As the massive operation unfolded, setbacks were inevitable. Equipment failures, miscommunications, and fatigue threatened to derail their progress. But Jake's resolve never wavered. During a critical moment, the filtration system began to overload. Alarms blared, and the facility shook. "We're losing stability," Leora shouted over the noise. Jake ran to the control panel, his fingers flying over the controls. "We need to redistribute the load. Now." With swift coordination, they managed to stabilize the system. The immediate crisis averted, they pressed on. Hours turned into days as they worked around the clock, driven by the hope of saving Zephra. One evening, as Jake and Leora were taking a brief respite, Zarek approached them. "You've done well so far," he admitted grudgingly. "But there's still a long way to go." Jake nodded. "We know. We're not giving up." The final phase of the plan involved releasing bioengineered organisms into the ocean to accelerate the breakdown of pollutants. It was a risky move, but necessary for the planet's recovery. As they prepared for the last step, Jake addressed the team. "This is it. We've come this far, and we can't turn back now. Let's finish what we started." With precision and care, they released the organisms. The team watched anxiously as the tiny creatures began their work, slowly but surely cleansing the water. Over the next few days, the results were astounding. The water clarity improved, and marine life started to return. The sight of fish swimming in the newly clean waters brought tears to many eyes. Zarek, witnessing the transformation, approached Jake. "You've succeeded where we failed," he said, his voice filled with newfound respect. "Thank you." Jake shook his head. "It wasn't just me. It was all of us, working together." The chapter closed with a sense of accomplishment and hope. The crisis had brought them to the brink, but their combined efforts had saved Zephra. As Jake looked out over the recovering ocean, he knew the journey wasn't over, but they had taken a monumental step forward. The future of Zephra, once bleak, now shimmered with promise. The final phase of their ambitious plan was underway. The bioengineered organisms released into the ocean had begun to work their magic, breaking down pollutants and restoring the water's clarity. Zephra's once dying oceans were showing signs of revival, and with them, the hope of the planet's inhabitants was reignited. Jake stood on the shore, watching the transformed waters. The sight was almost surreal. Fish darted through the clear blue, and the once dead coral reefs were beginning to show vibrant hues. He felt a profound sense of accomplishment, but also a lingering weight of the journey ahead. Leora joined him, her face radiant with relief. "We did it," she said softly. Jake nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "We did. But this is just the beginning." The news of their success spread like wildfire across Zephra. The once skeptical and cautious Zephyrons now looked to Jake with respect and gratitude. The council convened a special meeting to honor the team's efforts. In the grand hall, the head counselor addressed the assembly. "Today, we stand at the dawn of a new era for Zephra. Our oceans, once thought beyond saving, are now teeming with life. This would not have been possible without the relentless efforts of Jake Lawson and Leora." The applause was thunderous. Jake felt a wave of emotion as he stepped forward to speak. "Thank you. This journey has been challenging, but it has shown us what we can achieve when we work together. This is not just my success, it's ours. And we must continue this work to ensure a sustainable future for Zephra." Zarek, who had been a formidable opponent, approached Jake after the ceremony. His demeanor had softened. "You've proven yourself, Jake. I misjudged you, and for that, I apologize." Jake extended his hand, which Zarek grasped firmly. "No hard feelings. We all want what's best for Zephra." As the celebrations continued, Jake found himself contemplating his next steps. The initial crisis had been averted. Later that evening, Jake and Leora walked along the now clean shoreline. The twin moons cast a silvery glow on the water. "What's next for you?" Leora asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. Jake took a deep breath, looking out over the ocean. "I've been thinking about staying. There's still so much to do, and I want to make sure we build on what we've started." Leora smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that. We could use your expertise." Jake chuckled. "Looks like I've found a new home." In the following months, Jake settled into his new life on Zephra. He and Leora continued their research, developing new methods to enhance the planet's marine health. Their work expanded to include education programs, teaching the Zephyrans sustainable practices and the importance of environmental stewardship.